Right, welcome to this lesson. We're going to be talking about what odour you're going to be using to either start your dog or putting your dog onto a new odour, and how we're going to handle those odours and set those odours up, okay? So if you are starting from scratch, so you've never done scent work before and you don't know what odour to put your dog on, the best thing you can use is what we call an inert, hard to say obviously, an inert odour, okay? And this is basically an odour or something that we can use which is going to teach our dogs the search behaviour rather than imprinting them on an actual odour. Once the dogs have that search behaviour, we can then put imprint an odour onto them, okay? So we'll start off with that. So the best thing we can use for it's hard to say that, an inert odour is a Kong. So these are just normal Kongs, dog toys that you get. Each one, there's things that say that all Kongs smell the same. There's some things that say that the different colours smell differently. So benefit of the doubt, just use the same colour. So it doesn't matter which colour you use. If you're looking to do trials, then some of them just use a specific colour, and that's always red. So if you are looking to do trials, then grab yourself a red Kong. If you're just doing it for fun, it doesn't matter. The puppy Kongs are easier to cut up. So if you're not looking at doing trials, then get yourself a puppy Kong. Don't go for the black Kongs. They are really hard to cut up. They're a nightmare. So these are really easy to get hold of. They're worldwide. You can get them all over the world. So grab yourself a Kong if you don't know what odour you want to put your dog on and you want to start just with an inert odour. And to imprint it, we can use the whole Kong. So you're going to do the same as the imprinting video, where we're just going to hold the Kong like that and get the dogs to hit that Kong and get their reward. So exactly the same in that way. What we will start doing with the Kong as we're progressing, because it's quite a big item that the dog's going to be finding, especially if your dog plays with a Kong anyway, they may want to start picking this item up, and it's going to be really hard to hide this because it's huge. So once the dog starts to understand that's the odour we want, and we start to get them on other searches, other lineup searches, and onto the novel and vehicle searches, then we want to start cutting the Kong up. It's a pain in the arse to cut up, but once you do that first cut, you can usually get in there. Get yourself a really good pair of kitchen scissors. They're usually quite expensive. The cheaper ones, I've been through loads, the cheaper ones are rubbish. So get a nice good pair. There's loads of other ways. People use the little bench saws and things. I get scared by them because I think I'm going to cut my fingers off as well. People have used saws. I'm scared of them too, so I don't use them. And sometimes it's so rubbery that the saw doesn't go through. A good pair of scissors is your best bet to cut these up with. And you want to be looking at making them into this kind of size. So we've got a little selection here of different sizes, so you can make them into these kind of chunks. You can start with cutting the top off, so you've got what I call the Kong nipple, because it looks like a nipple, so you can start using that. So you can make it, you can start reducing the size of the Kong in stages as well. So don't go to a little tiny grain of sand kind of size from this. Make sure you go down in steps, and then we can get to smaller sizes. So you're going down to that. Move them back a little bit so you can see them. So these kind of sizes, and we can get even smaller. And the smaller the sizes, the easier it is to cut, to be honest, because you're just kind of shaving bits off. And it doesn't matter what shape they come out, as long as they're just little bits of Kong like that. And that's what we're going to get our dogs searching on. Now, the reason that Kong is so good to use is that it leaves very little residual odour. When we start working on our odours, so truffle oil or operational odours like tobacco and cadaver, they're going to leave trace odours lying around. So you've got to be careful of how you're handling them, which we'll go through in a minute, and where you're putting your hides out, because if you put a hide out and then move it, there's still going to be some residual odour there. With the Kong, it is said that we can put it down, and then if we move it within 30 seconds, that odour's gone from there. Just be mindful, if you leave that overnight somewhere on a fabric area, it is going to transfer odour. So you may find if you left it 24, 48 hours on say a sofa or something hidden on the side of a sofa, the next day your dog may still hit on that, even though the Kong's removed, because it's had a lot of time to leave that odour there. So the longer you leave your bit of Kong in a position, the longer you need to leave for the odour to go. So it is good in the fact that it leaves very, very little residual odour, but be mindful it will leave some if you leave it for a long time. The other good thing is we can handle it with our hands. Because the time scale for leaving residual odour is a long time, if we pick that up and put it somewhere, I'm not going to have the Kong odour on my hands. So I can touch other things and I'm not leaving that odour anywhere else, okay? So it just means handling our hides is a lot easier because we can just pick them up and put them different places. The one thing with that is we are going to leave our human scent on the Kong. So if we are going to handle them with our hands, make sure you're touching other places. If you're doing a lineup, touch all the other boxes so your human odours on everything as well and around the search room. So that is our inert odour that we're going to be using. So I'm just going to put these to one side a minute. And you can make loads of pieces from one Kong. All those bits in that tray, they're probably only about 1/8 of a Kong. So you can make loads and loads of little bits out of your one bit. Right, so my hands are really cold because it's very cold in this place. So if we want to look to put our dog straight onto odour and not use an inert, and there's pros and cons for this. So my operational dogs, I do like to get them straight onto the odour. It just means that we haven't got anything else that the dog would hit. So you could be doing an operational search looking for electrical storage devices, and you could be searching a room or someone's house who has dogs and they have a Kong in there, and your dog may hit on a Kong. It may be that there's a rubber that smells very, very similar to this and the dog hits on it. So sometimes it is good to put your dog straight onto odour because you know that is the only odour they've ever been rewarded for. So pros and cons, you have to be more mindful putting them straight onto odour. You can get a nice search behaviour on the Kong without having to worry about all those bits in between. So setting your odours up. Now what odour you use is entirely up to you. If you're going to be doing operational work, you need to work out what odour you want your dog to be finding, what area you want to be working in. Each different odour has a different search style. So, and there's different job opportunities for different odours as well. So you need to think about what you want to put your dog on first and what areas you want to work in before you put your dog on the odour, obviously. If you're working trials, you need to have a look at what trials you want to enter to see what odours they use. Generally, most trials in the UK are cloves, gun oil, truffle oil, catnip and Kong. There are some different ones, so you have a look at what you want to enter to see what you want to put your dog on. If you're doing it for fun and you're not thinking about entering trials or doing operational stuff, you can use anything at all that's not harmful to the dog, obviously. So you could use lemon essential oil, lavender, anything, the wild oyster for that one, anything at all. So I'm going to show you how you would set up sorting out your odour items for truffle oil, because that's what I have here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need is some nitrile gloves, because what we don't want to do is get the odour from the truffle oil onto our hands, because then we're going to be touching everything else and we're going to transfer that scent. Okay, so you can get boxes of these from many places, and don't forget these are one use only, because we're going to get oil or the scent on them, so they're one use only. Okay, so shove your gloves on so we're not going to get contaminated, but we're still going to take extra precautions after that as well, if we can get our gloves on. My hands are cold, so they're not going on very well. So what we're going to be using for this is a little airtight container. I like to use glass because it is very airtight and nothing's going to permeate through. Sometimes plastic, depends on what plastic you've got, it can permeate through. Metal is quite good. Something that is airtight. You're going to need some little cotton bud things used for makeup, or cotton pads, or some cotton buds. You need yourself a pair of scissors, and you'll need your odour, obviously. Now what we don't want to do is put our odour straight onto the items we're going to put out for our hides. Okay, so we want to be able to have the odour in here and then put our items we're going to be putting out on the search in there as well, so the odour from the oil just gets infused with everything. So if you're using cloves, you're going to just put your whole cloves down the bottom there, but you don't necessarily want your items that are going to go out for the search to be touching the source of the odour that you're using. Okay, so we're using a liquid for this one, so I have to put it on something. So what I'm going to do is get a couple of my little pads out, and I'm going to put my odour from here onto the first pad. Okay, let me get it out of the box. It's all very exciting. It's very expensive, this truffle oil. You get a nice little box with it as well. And if we're using truffle oil, it's English truffle oil that we use for trials, okay? There's a few, I think there's white and black truffle oil. And all you're going to do is put just a drip on there. That's all we need. It smells so bad. And put it back on there. Many people like the smell of it. The lid doesn't go on very well either. So put that back in there, and I'll stand that upright because that lid doesn't go on very well. We don't want any leakages, do we? Because it smells too much. So put that over there, and that is all we're going to use. See, that is soaked in to there, and that's going to do is quite a few hides. Okay, so I'm going to pop that, and I'm not touching it with my gloves either, so I don't want to transfer it to anything else. So I'm just going to kind of pop it in as best I can so it drops to the bottom. And we want it to lay flat without actually touching the yellow splodge, so it's in the bottom there. Okay. Now, if I put I'm going to use cotton buds to soak in the scent. If I put them straight in there, they're going to be touching that area. So what I'm going to do is just put another little pad. You don't want to push it down because you want the scent to permeate around. You just want to pop it down so that you're not going to have them sitting right on top of the odour and having the oil straight on that. We want just the odour on these buds. Okay. So that jar is going to fill up with loads of odour because it's very smelly stuff, and that whole jar is going to be filled with odour. So these little cottony buddy things, so we can take, I'm not going to do them all because I would usually fill this whole thing up with cotton buds, so I'm just going to do a few just to show you, otherwise it'll be a very boring video if you watch me cutting up buds. Now, ear pluggy things, all I'm going to do, if I can get my fingers to work, is cut to the ends of these. Do go flying sometimes, so you might have to go and retrieve them. You're just going to cut the ends off like that. I told you they went flying. It's like a Blue Peter video, isn't it? That bit is going to go in the bin. All we're interested in is these little bits here. So I'm just going to cut a few more up and hope they don't go flying everywhere. Christ. Fast forward if you're watching this. I'm just cutting buds up at the moment. You'd have thought I would have done it. Here's one I made earlier for this one, wouldn't you? But this is easier than cutting the Kong up. That's the worst thing about using Kong, is it's hard to cut it up. 3 more. Oh, hello. You can have some fun with these. Oh my word. Oh. Oh. Right. Rescue all my buds. Right, so these little bits can just go straight in the bin because they're not needed unless you can find other uses for them if you don't like waste, but they're going to go in the bin. Now, these are my little buds which I'm going to be putting out for my hide, and all I'm going to do is pop them in there, so they're going to sit on top of the clean bit. Now you can fill that, I can smell that oil already, you can fill that right to the top. You can have as many as you like in there. Obviously you need some air circulation, so make sure it's not like crammed packed full, but you can fill it up to kind of that area, so you can have loads and loads of hides with that amount of oil. So you're when you buy that oil, even though it's expensive, it does go a really long way. Now you want to leave that to sit there for 24 hours, something like that, to really get all that odour going in. The more cotton buds you have, the longer you want to leave it, because obviously some of them, it's going to be harder for it to permeate. If I've only got that many, I could leave that for a couple of hours and there's going to be enough odour on it, okay? So you can do any odour you want, put a little thing on there to say what the odour is, and then that's going to last you a hell of a long time. And that can sit there. Right, so that is creating your scent targets, shall we say. So how we handle them, if we're using the odour and not our inert odour, then we still want to be wearing our gloves, okay? Bear in mind these are single use, so if we've made them up, we're going to throw them away. But I'm just going to carry straight on here because it's just an example. So if we're going to put to either imprint or to do some training with our dogs, obviously we need the odour, so I'm going to bring that back. That's been sat there for 24 hours, something like that, to get the odour going through. And we need some receptacle to put in. Now we can use either a tin with a hole in the top or these little pipette things, and these are like the medical pipette things they use to do testing. I don't really know, I'm not a chemist, but you can get these on many online sites as well. It doesn't matter what size you have. If you're going to make little holes in things to pop these in, that's a real good thing for these, is you can make a hole in the wall and then just pop them in, make a hole in the table and pop things in. Then make sure the hole you make is the same size as this so it pops in nicely. So when we want to handle these things, we obviously don't want to touch them with our hands because we're going to get all the odour from them onto our hands, and then we're going to put that everywhere. So you need to get yourself a little pair of tweezers. You can see them there. You can get lots of different sizes, big ones if you can't see very well, or just little ones. And all we're going to do, I'll be able to reach these now, I need bigger ones, is grab with that, so we're not touching it at all, and pop it in. Now if your dog's starting out, you maybe want 2 or 3 in there, maybe 4, maybe fill it all the way up. As your dog gets better, you could just go down to 1 little bud. So that's got 1 bud in the bottom there, okay? And then you can shut the top to keep it in, and then make sure we open it up when we're going to be having our dog searching, or else there's no odour going to be coming out. So that's 1 hide ready to go out. And again, I haven't actually touched the odour item with my hands yet, so I'm okay to be touching other things. It's just a bit more precaution so that nothing goes on us. And we can put them in our tin. Shut that up because there's going to be odour coming out of that. Put that to one side. Obviously, again, a couple more in there if we're going to be, if the dog isn't that, if you're imprinting it, because you want quite a bit of odour coming out. And we can set that up a little tin. You can put magnets in the tin as well, which means you can then put it onto, don't get your glove caught in it. You can then put it onto metal surfaces as well, and you can stick it on the walls and things like that. But then we've got our 2 hides ready to use. We can imprint with the tin if we want to, but that's our 2 hides ready to go. So when they're in those receptacles, we can take our gloves off. When we're picking them up to put them out, or to take them out, then gloves back on. Anytime you're going to be touching the odour, we want to put our gloves on to make sure we're not transferring anything. So that is working out which odour you want to put your dogs on, and setting your odour up and putting your odour into search pots. So one final note on when we have our odour buds is they are single use only. So whenever you use these buds, make sure that after your search that they are binned afterwards. What you don't want to do is put the buds that you've used back into the pot, because you're going to have lots of different odours on them from the dog slobber or anywhere else it's been. So anytime you do use any of these buds, make sure you bin them afterwards and don't use them for a second time.